In Daniel chapter 2, at verse 3, there is a familiar passage. Daniel chapter 2, verse 3. And the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. We'd like to reason with you very briefly on this King holiday. When dreams are interrupted. When dreams are interrupted. Have you ever waken up in the middle of a great dream? Oh, everybody got that one right. Well, tell me this, did you try to get back to it? When you got back, was it gone? I mean, that's kind of frustrating. I mean, you're in the middle of this great dream, and then it's gone. For months, a young woman waited for the man of her dreams to propose to her. One night, in a dream, he came to her holding something behind his back, and he said, I got something I want to say to you. And just as he fixed his mouth to say the words, the phone rang. And she woke up, and it was somebody with, what they were saying wasn't worth nothing. You was trying to hurry up and get him off the phone. She tried to lay back down to find out what he said. It was gone. A few days ago, my wife told me that she was dreaming about cooking pork chops. She said the pork chops was sizzling in the skillet. She said the smell filled the air. And she said then suddenly she woke up. And unable to finish the dream, she got up and fixed a full-course breakfast with pork chops, hot cakes, eggs. Called Robert and Keita. They came over and ate everything. They had breakfast on the house, but she could never get back to the dream. You know, there's no shortage of interrupted dreams. Were you on a cruise in your dream? Were you at a family vacation in your dream? Did you see yourself winning the lottery, and when you were sitting there checking the numbers, they had called off all the numbers, and when they got to the last number, you woke up? You don't know whether you won or lost. Sometimes we're actually glad about our dreams. We're glad about our dreams, and we're glad something interrupted us. Sometimes you dream like you're falling off a mountain. Before you get to the bottom, you wake up. You ever dream you were drowning? And while you were down there drowning, you know, oh Lord, this is it. And all of a sudden you woke up. Sometimes you dream you're smothering. You dream this, that, or the other. And sometimes you sit there in the bed just fighting yourself. You dream, you're dreaming that you're running in the bed while you're on your back. And then you wake up before they catch you. Whoever it was, Freddy Krueger or whoever it was chasing you down. You know, many people have had both of these types of dreams. During the recent presidential elections, some were excited because they dreamed about the prospect of seeing the first woman president of the United States. And millions were disturbed to learn that their dream had been interrupted by an unforeseen outcome. They went to bed on election night, sure that the victory had been achieved, but woke up the next morning to learn that the impossible, the improbable had happened. It just could not have happened, and it was such a nightmare that everybody kept waiting to wake up out of this bad dream. They waited for the knock on the door that would wake them up. They waited for the doorbell to ring. They waited for the phone to ring or the smoke detector to go off, something to alert them that this was a bad dream and it didn't really happen. But it did happen. The dream had been interrupted. We were happy when bad dreams are interrupted. We don't like them, so we like bad dreams to be interrupted. But what happens when our best dreams are interrupted? How do you respond? Sometimes we respond as Langston Hughes did in his famous poem, The Dream Deferred. And that question he posed the question, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Does it fester like a sore and run? Or does it explode? Sometimes dreams which are our motivating forces, sometimes they act to inspire us, and without dreams we're like a broken winged dove. We have a crippled existence. We limp along through life until we just fade away if we have no dreams. If our dreams are interrupted, we can either get mad, dry up like a raisin in the sun, or we can make pancakes and pork chops. Dr. Martin Luther King is often remembered for his 1963 historic speech, I Have a Dream. And they're standing in front of a national audience and 200,000 people in front of him and millions watching by means of television. He talked about America's uncashed check that they owed the African American community. And while he was talking, people sat quietly. And then on the video, you can hear Mahalia Jackson saying, "Tell him about the dream, Martin. Tell him about the dream." In that moment, he went off of his prepared script. And he told the nation about the dream that God gave America. And his dream embodied the hopes and the aspirations of our entire race. And he promoted the idea of a nation where race and color would not be recognized for their uniqueness only, but they would not be things that would matter in the whole scope of things. He talked about a nation, a day when all men would be recognized as being created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among these would be life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That was the essence of what he said. And 5 years after Dr. King's historic speech, he was assassinated. The dream was interrupted for a period. But barriers continued to fall down all across the nation. African Americans became part of the political force of the nation. We started seeing African Americans elected to offices all across the South, even here in Monroe. Mr. Toston, Mr. Pierce, Reverend Russell, and all these people started being elected. And now we have elected officials all over the South, African Americans. We think nothing of it. Then we went through a period of a seesaw type of arrangement where we lived the dream under Presidents Carter and Clinton, and then found ourselves interrupted by Reagan and Bush, father and son. Then in 2008, Barack Obama was elected president. It appeared that the dream was on again. Many believe that it has been now interrupted. The dreams we see in our sleep, if they're interrupted, we can't get back to them. And we never know how they will end. However, a godly dream, even if it's interrupted, will always be fulfilled. Let me say that again. A godly dream, even if it's interrupted, will always be fulfilled. We can get back to them, because if we get off track and forget where we were, God will wake us up, give it back to us, and allow us to proceed. So as Christians, we're frustrated that the dream of the kingdom that we're striving for has often been interrupted. But we're confident that our God is still able as the praise team sang, he's awesome enough to be able to do whatever he has promised us to do, and it will be fulfilled. If you'll take that as an introductory thought and extrapolate it, you'll see how it'll sit squarely on Daniel chapter 2, verse 3. Because this text focuses upon a king who had a dream and God's response to his frustration and Daniel having to interpret the dream for him. The king in the text is Nebuchadnezzar. And he had a dream that troubled him, and the thing got more complicated because not only did the dream trouble him, but he couldn't remember the dream. So he called in all of his soothsayers and astrologers and all of his wise men, and he commanded them that they need to tell him what his dream was, then tell him what the dream means, and if they couldn't do both of those things, he was going to kill them and all their family members. Well, they tried, but they couldn't put it back together again. So finally they found Daniel. And when Daniel came forward after prayer, he came before the king with the answer. Nebuchadnezzar's dream involved a statue with a head of gold, and a breast and arms of silver, belly and thighs of brass, legs of iron, and feet and toes that were made of iron and clay together. And then in the middle of that dream, he saw a rock that was coming out of nowhere that seemed to knock that big statue down and then roll all over it. We have learned later that that statue represented the kingdoms of Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome, and finally all the world kingdoms that would one day come to an end. The last kingdom that would come would be crushed by a rock. We've found out that that rock now is Jesus. The rock will become a mountain that fills the whole earth, and his kingdom will never end. Despite all of its power and despite all of its influence, the great men who would follow would all tumble and fall, and we have seen them historically. You study about them, about Xerxes and Persia. You study about Alexander and Greece, and you study about the Caesars of Rome. You study about Napoleon the Great, and all of those, they've fallen, but there will be a nation, a kingdom that will come, headed by one who comes from God, who will be the rock, whose kingdom, when established, will not have an end. When that dream comes, and that dream, as it goes on, it may be interrupted. There will be rise and falls of champions and villains. But what God has promised, it will come to pass. Now, there are at least three thoughts that we ought to gather as we share on this King Day about the importance of these things. Very few dreams are fulfilled without some level of deferment, some level of interruption. That challenges each of us to consider these three thoughts. First, interrupted dreams can be resumed. Interrupted dreams can be resumed. Now, many people have dreams that they are interrupted by circumstances. You started off with some dreams of your own, but they got interrupted by circumstances. But that doesn't spell permanent defeat for your dream, especially if the dream that you have for yourself is a God-centered dream. Joseph was a young man who dreamed that one day that his brothers were he was going to reach such a high position that his brothers were going to bow down before him, and that made his brothers a little upset. And they, of course, now you can imagine in your family, if you got sisters and brothers there, and one of them said that I dreamed that one day I'm going to be successful and you're going to have to come to me and bow down and beg me for something. I don't think the other brothers and sisters are going to like that too much, especially if you kept telling it to us over and over and over, and especially if Daddy always favored you over the rest of them and gave you a special coat of many colors and didn't give us one, and then you said we're going to be bowing down to you when we grown. I don't think so. So what they did to Joseph was they took him and put him in a pit. That dream had to go on hold. While he was in the pit, it looked like that dream wasn't going to happen. Then after they got him out of the pit, he was sold into slavery. Sure looked like his dream wasn't going to happen. Then he became the house manager for Potiphar, and there it looked like it wasn't going to happen. Then he ended up in prison. It definitely know it wasn't going to happen then. It looked like it wasn't going to happen. The dream was interrupted by his prison stay, but God eventually raised him to a high position in Egypt. And many years later, when there was a famine in the land, here was Joseph over the only food source there was, and here came his family, his brothers. They bowed down before him, not knowing who he was, and the dream came to be. It was interrupted, but still fulfilled. There are many today who dreamed of attaining a college education. Some of you dreamed of owning a business. Some of you dreamed of pursuing one career or another, but you got sidelined because of some unforeseen circumstances, things you can't control. Unfortunately, you can't control illness. You can't control financial misfortune. The money just didn't come. You had lack of opportunities. Doors were perhaps closed in your face. A plethora of other adverse situations may have come, but yet you got sidelined beside the fact that you tried your absolute best. The interruption should not derail your aspiration. There's still time right now for you to go back to college. Still time for you to start that business, what you're waiting on. Still time for you to pursue that opportunity that you look for. Some of those things that blocked you a few years back, those things are not there anymore. Perhaps you started a family, and maybe that stopped you from going back to school. So now the children are old enough for you to go back. So what did you 30 years old? You can still go back to college. So what did you 40 years old, 50 years old? They had a lady a few years ago graduated from ULM. She's 77 years old. So what? You can always go back. We suggest to you, brothers and sisters, that there are many who had some things to interrupt you, but that doesn't mean that your dream needs to be permanently derailed. Keep the faith. If God gave you the dream, it might be interrupted, but it will come full circle. Now, I didn't say if you dreamed it. I said if God gave you the dream, it will come full circle. It may look like that it will never happen, but if he gave you the dream, you don't give up on it, it can be resumed. Now, that's your first thought. But for the second thought, you ought to consider this. Interrupted dreams should not be forgotten. Interrupted dreams should not be forgotten. If our dream is interrupted, we ought not stop trying to get it done. Don't put it on the back burner and forget about it. When Daniel asked the king to tell him what the dream was, the king said, I got you here because I can't remember it. The phrase he used is, the thing is gone from me. He could not remember it. It had gone out of his mind. Folks, you should never forget a God-given dream. Whatever it is, if it's for your family, if it's for you, if God has given you a dream, don't put it out of your mind, no matter how impossible it seems. You know the stories of how many people have went on even when other folks say you couldn't. Here's Michael Jordan get cut off his high school team because he wasn't good enough. Coach said he ain't good enough. Can you believe that? Now, suppose he would have believed what coach said. And so, well, coach said I ain't good enough. But the idea is that if God gave you the dream, it don't matter what coach say. It don't matter what P. Wright say. It don't matter what anybody else say. If God gave you the dream, he will force it, and he will arrange things for it to happen. There's a whole lot of facts out there. I just want to give you this one. Here's our friend, Abraham Lincoln. In 1831, Abraham Lincoln started a little business. Joker crashed on him in the same year. A year later, in 1832, Abraham Lincoln tried to run for state legislature. He lost then too. Next year, in 1833, Abraham tried to open up another business. It crashed on him. In 1835, Abraham Lincoln he was madly in love with a lady, and she died on him, messed his mind up. 1836, Abraham Lincoln had a nervous breakdown behind all of that. And they said he'd never be able to stand in front of anybody else again because the joker's mind is completely gone. In 1843, Abraham Lincoln ran for Congress and lost. In 1848, he ran again and lost. In 1855, he ran for the Senate and lost. In 1856, Lincoln ran for vice president and lost. In 1859, Lincoln ran for the Senate again and lost. And then in 1860, he ran for president and won. Now what am I saying? It don't matter. If God gave you the dream, you just keep trying. If God gave, I ain't talking about if you're just foolish, you just want to be out there, you know. But if God gave you the dream, and you know when God gave you the dream, if he gave you the dream, you just keep trying. Today there are many who have forgotten the essence of Dr. Martin Luther King's dream. Many have forgotten that he dreamed about solving the problem of poverty in America. Many have also forgotten that he made the call for justice in America and that he wanted to see justice run down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. Many have forgotten that he challenged us to disobey unjust laws and be prepared to go to jail for it if necessary to call attention to it. Many have forgotten all of this. He called upon us to denounce wars and to denounce wrongdoing and denounce those who profit off of poverty all around. In our community now, every single organization, major organization in our community that's dealing with poverty that we control has been snatched away from us. Everything that we had that was ours. The Tri-District Boys Club, they stopped funding for that. Twin City Welfare, they stopped the funding, pulled the rug right from under it. Head Start is gone from everything that we control. All the Twin City Athletic Association. Everybody else wants to profit off of it. They want it because there's money coming to it. We want it to help our people. They want it because it got money tied to it. And we sit back, and when it happened, nobody said nothing. Head Start was stolen from us, and with 6 elected officials sitting on the board, nobody, not a news conference, nobody said a single word. Sat quietly and let it be snatched away, and it's still closed. Can't even find a place to put it. I suggest to you, brothers and sisters, that sometimes we forget that Dr. King urged us to fight when it was time to fight. Speak up when it was time to speak up. And because now we got folks tied up into the politics, we don't want to say nothing because that might not be politically feasible. Today, even though we feel that this dream of ours has been interrupted, we must not forget what it was all about. We must not forget the quest and the struggle. We can't sit quietly and see racism as it rages all over the nation and our freedoms become diminished. Today, brothers and sisters, we can't afford to dry up like a raisin in the sun. We can't afford to fester like a sore and run. We must march until victory is won. But then there's a third thought for you to consider. We should protect against corrupted dreams. We should protect ourselves against corrupted dreams. That is, dreams can be resumed. Dreams sometimes must not be forgotten. But yet, thirdly, we must protect against corrupted dreams. You know, in the Bible, they have a group of people called Samaritans. The Jews didn't deal with Samaritans, and there was a reason they didn't deal with Samaritans. And the reason they didn't deal with Samaritans was because when they were captured by the Assyrians, the Samaritans took a handful or a whole region of Jews and carried them back to Assyria, put them in their schools and re-educated them to the fact that they thought like Assyrians. They worshiped their god of the Assyrians. They had Assyrian customs. They did everything like the Assyrians. And after they fully indoctrinated them, then they sent them back to live among the Jews, hoping that they would spread the Assyrian ideas to all the rest of them. Well, the Jews got wise to that, and they said, look, these folks look like us. They got the same color as us. But they don't think like us. Something ain't right. And so what they did was they simply had no dealings with Samaritans whatsoever. If Louisiana was Israel, then this would be North Louisiana would be Israel, and New Orleans would be Judah, and Alexandria would be Samaria. And to get from the top to the bottom, they'd go all the way around and wouldn't go straight through because they didn't want to deal with Samaritans. Matter of fact, they looked at Jesus real funny when he started talking to the Samaritan lady at the well. Why are you dealing with them? You know we don't have no dealing with them people. Their mind ain't right. They look like us, but they're not us. Today, brothers and sisters, there's a generation that must be on guard that Dr. King's dream is not corrupted. As the years pass, many now have their own ideas about what the dream means and have substituted their own versions of what they say Dr. King was about. Some have even gone as far as to put words in Dr. King's mouth. If Dr. King were alive, he would be for this idea. And if Dr. King were alive, he'd be against this idea. His dream has been reduced to a message for the middle class, and few people today speak about the poor in America. But those of you who live in this room, you remember that when Dr. King talked a lot, most of his conversation was about the poor people in America. But 22 people that we know of ran for president, probably more than that, but the big ones, the 22 people who ran for president, they all said we want to do something to help the middle class. Nobody said they were going to do anything to help the poor. Everybody said we need to rise up and we need to help the middle class. Well, what about the poor man? You ain't got to do nothing for the rich man. He's going to take care of his own. But everybody's going to take care of the middle. And guess what? Ain't nobody in this room middle. We all poor. On the scheme of things, if you ain't making $100,000, you poor, you know, so we all poor in this room. So the idea is nobody wants to help the poor man. But his dream was about the poor and the middle and everyone working together as brothers and sisters. Some have corrupted his dream to make it be that Dr. King, if he was here, he would be for gay marriage. If Dr. King was here, he would say that's a civil rights. And those who are here today know that was never in the forefront of his talk. You never heard him standing up in Washington, D.C. saying anything about we need to have gay marriages. You never heard him in Alabama or in Mississippi or in Memphis saying we need to have gay. But somebody else has corrupted the dream and stuck their own words in his mouth when he cannot answer. Corrupted dreams don't fulfill themselves the way they should. A corrupted dream will give you a corrupted results. A corrupted dream will give you a corrupted results. We should protect ourselves against, even when it comes to our faith, that we know that God is good. But God has never promised that he would always be good to us in the way we want him to be. Now, there are some who've corrupted what God teaches, and many of our folk are falling off and because of the corrupted dreams. God has not promised us that we were going to be wealthy if you worship him. He didn't promise you that you were going to be healthy all the time if you worshiped him. He didn't promise you that you wasn't going to ever have any hard days and the rain wasn't going to fall on your house. He didn't say if you join Tabernacle and start putting the tithe in church, it's going to rain on everybody else's house, but your house is going to be dry all the time. He never promised you that. He never promised you that you wasn't going to never get sick one day. But yet there are people out there who corrupted what God said and said, if you give right, praise right, send the praises up, you'll never be sick, you'll always be wealthy and healthy, and you'll be prosperous all your days. If you give me $1, give it to me, give me $1, and you'll get 10 back. And somebody fell for that because they gave you a corrupted dream. Those of you who study the Bible, you know God promised just the opposite of that. He didn't tell you you were going to be prosperous. What he did say that you're going to probably be persecuted if you follow him. He said you could possibly lose something if you follow him. He said don't put any stock in none of that. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all the other things will be added to you. But don't go for that, because these folk are going to go after you. So don't try to do those things. He promised us, what did he promise us? He promised us that he would answer our prayers. Yes, no, or wait a while. You're going to get an answer. You ain't going to never get a busy signal. That he promised to answer our prayers. He promised that he would never leave us alone. And that no matter what we in, good times, bad times, he would never leave us by ourselves. And he promised us when this life is over, that he would give us eternal life in a place with him. And that's what he promised us. Anybody else that tell you anything else, they have corrupted what Christ talked about. And we need to be, you need to stay in Bible study. You need to stay in Sunday school. You need to stay in the Word so that you can't be corrupted. When you hear somebody telling it to you wrong, that you can spot it right off. There are many prosperity preachers out there today who basically tell you a whole lot of stuff. Usually ends up being with you giving them money, and they're going to drive a Lexus, and they're going to drive whatever else, and you're going to still be in your little Volkswagen. And I suggest to you that that's not the way it operates, folks. What it operates is we build a kingdom of God and serve him through serving other people, and he rewards us with eternal life for our faith and for our service. That reward he gives us may not be in cash. The reward, did you know that the reward that God gives you may not be in cash? You've been waiting to get the millions for a long time, and it ain't never come. But every night you sleep sound. You ain't never got the millions, but you can sit down and eat a bowl of greens with your fingers and get grease all over your mouth and feel real good. He been blessing you. You didn't get the millions, but you've been eating so well you done gained all the pounds trying to lose them now. You didn't get the millions, but he gave you all them children, all them grandchildren, and all of them. He gave you a whole lot. You didn't get the million. God blesses you a whole lot of ways. Don't let anybody fool you that if you ain't getting a whole lot of money, you ain't being blessed. Sometimes God gives it to us one way, sometimes he gives it to us another. Finally, brothers and sisters, we must consider that the dream that God has given the faithful cannot be deterred, because instead of giving us a dream, he gave us Jesus. You hear what I said? The dream can't be deterred, because instead of giving us a dream, he gave us Jesus. Abraham had a dream of one day that his descendants would fill the earth, and they would be more than the skies, the stars in the sky. Moses had a dream that Israel would be free from Egyptian bondage and one day establish a great nation. Martin Luther King dreamed of a nation where everyone would acknowledge the brotherhood of man and the fatherhood of God. But when God answered the prayers of the faithful, he didn't do it with a dream. He sent Jesus. Jesus is the dream. Jesus is our dream of moving out of our hunger into a satisfied soul. Jesus is our dream of moving out of our darkness and walking into the marvelous light. Jesus is our dream of moving out of our sinking sand experience to ground ourselves on the solid rock. Jesus is our dream and our hope of moving out of our spiritual slavery to complete spiritual freedom. Jesus is our dream of moving out of our defeat and stepping out into glory of victory. Jesus is our dream of moving out of our despair into unspeakable joy. He is our dream that we can stop singing "Soon I Will Be Done" with the troubles of the world and be able to say, "I'm so glad that trouble don't last always." He is a dream that refused to go away, even though his dream was interrupted, even though he was disrupted. He refused to be corrupted, and he went on to carry for us the burden in his own spirit and in his own soul. He was rejected by the people in his own hometown, but he wouldn't go away. He was persecuted by the scribes and Pharisees, but he wouldn't go away. They whipped him mercilessly all night long and brought him before hostile courts, but the dream refused to die. They hung him on a cross, stretched him between two thieves. They disrupted him. They interrupted him, buried him in a borrowed tomb. But early Sunday morning, he arose and rose with all power in his hands. Today, friends, our dream lives. And because he lives, I have hope for tomorrow because he lives. Somebody here today says, "You know, God gave me a dream. I see that it has been interrupted sometimes. It has been disrupted sometimes. But I'm going to resume that dream. I need to become a member of the church. I need to put my hand in the preacher's hand and give my heart to God. I need to say, Despite all that other people say, I'm going for the dream. Because the dream is Jesus. And I need Jesus in my life. That might be somebody going from place to place, church to church. And you say, this is my day, this is my time, this is my hour. When dreams are interrupted, they can be resumed. This might be the day that you resume your dream. And say, Lord, today I'm going to get myself back in church. I'm going to give my hand to that preacher. And I'm going to make my commitment right now that I'm going to resume the dream that he gave me. I'm going to do it with vigor. I'm going to do it with confidence. I'm going to do it with faith. May we stand. The ministers and the deacons of our church are about to move down each aisle. And as they move down each aisle, they're going to raise their hand. And as they raise their hand, what they're basically doing is inviting you. They're inviting you to say, Lord, today I come to claim this dream. I come to accept you in the pardon of my sins. And what we offer you is not a dream. We offer you Jesus. We don't offer you hope. We offer you Jesus. We don't offer you imagination. We offer you Jesus. And if you get Jesus, things may interrupt you along the way. But whatever he's planned for you, it will happen. Frustrations may come, but if you have Jesus, you'll have it. Why not accept him today? There may be one.